Before we begin, take a moment. If you find this story interesting, leave a comment with the number 1 and subscribe to support me. But if it's not quite your style, comment with the number 2 so I can improve and do better next time. Your feedback is my greatest motivation. On the day my mother departed the house, my stepfather also exited quietly. I paid little attention, assuming he had gone to work as usual. After breakfast, I commenced cleaning the kitchen, washing the remaining dishes. The atmosphere was tranquil, punctuated only by the sound of running water and clattering dishes. I became so absorbed in my task that I failed to notice a figure approaching from behind. Suddenly, a rough hand encircled my waist and gripped tightly. The unexpected sensation caused me to stiffen, and my breath caught as my stepfather's breath brushed against my ear, sending a chill down my spine. I attempted to struggle, but that hand restrained me firmly, leaving me no opportunity to escape. In that moment, fear and a torrent of panicked questions surged within me. The once familiar kitchen transformed into a constricting, suffocating space, making it difficult to breathe. Thus began my haunting narrative. Greetings, everyone. My name is Evelyn. I am 19 years of age and have resided with my mother since childhood due to my father's demise. Throughout my early years, my mother, Yissa, was a strong and resilient lady who made significant sacrifices to raise me. My upbringing was imbued with her love and care. Despite the lack of plenty in our lives, my mother always instilled in me the values of independence and resilience in the face of adversity, leading me to believe that significant change was necessary. Upon reaching the age of 18, it was the first occasion my mother informed me about meeting someone significant and her desire to further their connection. I was very astonished, as she had shown little interest in romantic pursuits since my father's death. Yet, she was markedly different this time. Her eyes sparkled, and a smile perpetually graced her lips. She expressed her desire for me to meet a man she intended to introduce as part of the family. Upon our meeting, I was taken aback by my future stepfather, Aiden. He was a tall man who appeared significantly younger than his years, being only a few years my senior. From a distance, one might easily mistake him for my brother or friend rather than my mother's partner. His charming smile and deep blue eyes elicited immediate sympathy. Yet it was his youthful demeanor and elegance that left me perplexed. I struggled to comprehend why someone like Aiden would choose my mother, a woman over 42, despite her enduring beauty. I attempted to seem at ease to avoid distressing my mother. Although, as time progressed, I increasingly sensed that something was off. I inquired of my mother on numerous occasions, "Mother, why did he choose to marry you? He is rather youthful. Could it be that he has some intention?" My mother consistently dismissed it and reprimanded me. Her tone was earnest, firmly, "Evelyn, do not assert that. This is true affection, transcending age. Aiden adores me." I endeavored to trust my mother for her intrinsic qualities, although I remained skeptical about Aiden's demeanor. Entirely unlike most men, he always exhibited politeness and attentiveness towards my mother, even engaging in cooking, cleaning, and assisting her with household chores, an occurrence I had never seen in any other guy. Nevertheless, each time he gazed at me, there was an unsettling quality in his eyes. They were not just the eyes of an uncle observing his stepdaughter. I found it challenging to articulate my thoughts. I reassured myself that perhaps I was overthinking and needed to allow him the opportunity to demonstrate his worth to my mother. Aiden married her after a brief courtship, swiftly integrating into our family. However, I could not ignore the fact that his presence had altered the dynamics within our modest home. Family meals no longer felt the same, overshadowed by an indefinable tension between us. Despite my reluctance to voice my concerns, I recognized my mother's happiness. She placed unwavering trust in Aiden, viewing him as a source of joy and solace following years of solitude. Yet, I couldn't suppress my curiosity. Does this man genuinely love my mother? Or is there an underlying secret at play that I have yet to discover? Over time, I became accustomed to Aiden's presence in the family. Despite my initial shyness and awkwardness, I could not deny the joy he brought to my mother. He frequently assisted her with household chores and cooking, consistently exhibiting a polite and proper demeanor. Gradually, everything stabilized. And I attempted to convince myself that my initial doubts were merely figments of my imagination. One evening, after a long and exhausting day at school, I went to the bathroom to unwind. Since I had not had the opportunity to do the laundry, I hung my underwear in the bathroom, intending to collect it for washing with the other clothes the following morning. After taking a shower, I wrapped a towel around myself and exited the room to find clothes to change into. However, upon returning for my underwear, I discovered it was missing. I halted, perplexed, considering that I could have left it somewhere. I checked the restroom, opened every cabinet door, and bent down to inspect beneath the sink, but it was gone. Initially, I assumed I must have left it in the bedroom. I returned to my room and searched through the heap of soiled garments and drawers, yet I could not locate it. A peculiar sensation emerged within me, causing confusion. The pants had evidently been hung there prior to my shower, but now they had vanished without a trace. After changing, I proceeded to the living room where my mother and Aiden were watching television. They appeared entirely at ease, with my mother even laughing heartily at a humorous scene on the screen. I hesitated briefly before inquiring, "Mom, Stepdad, did anyone visit?" Upon entering the bathroom after my shower, I sensed something was off. Both individuals turned to face me. And my astonished mother said, "What did you lose?" I paused, opting for vagueness, and just said affirmatively, indicating that it was a personal item. My underwear, which had been hanging in the upstairs bathroom, is now missing. Aiden grinned slightly and shook his head, asserting that no one had entered the bathroom. "Maybe you misplaced it somewhere." Mom concurred. "Try to recall if you ever did relocate it somewhere, Uncle Aiden." I was seated here the whole time, and no one entered the restroom. I refrained from making any more comments. I merely nodded and returned to my room, contemplating whether I had indeed misplaced it without recollection. Despite my attempts to dismiss the matter as trivial, an unsettling sensation persisted. A part of me remained curious about the fate of my underwear, leading to an enduring sense of unease. Since that day, I cannot articulate the source of my unease. Yet it feels as though an unseen presence is monitoring my every action. Initially, I attempted to reassure myself, attributing it to my heightened sensitivity following the incident involving my missing underwear. However, this sensation intensified rather than diminished. The most peculiar aspect occurred during my showers, where my bathroom door, composed of frosted glass, allowed only a vague outline to be discerned from the outside. While I could faintly perceive a silhouette of someone standing outside, at first, I dismissed it. But over time, it became increasingly pronounced. Each time I bathed, I perceived a shadowy apparition, indistinct yet faintly discernible, positioned before the bathroom door for a brief moment before vanishing. The initial occurrence transpired one evening as I entered the bathroom and activated the hot water for relaxation. In an instant, I glimpsed a shadowy figure outside the glass door, causing me to halt, breathless, with my heart racing. "Who is it?" I called gently. However, there was no reply. I approached the glass door to get a clearer view, but the person had vanished. By the time I opened the door to inspect the corridor, the area outside the restroom was entirely vacant. No one was there, just a dim light emanating from the living room. I remained there for many seconds, attempting to discern any sounds, but the environment was unsettlingly silent. I convinced myself that I might be hallucinating or that it was merely a reflection of light. Nevertheless, the sense of insecurity persisted. It did not cease in the bathroom. In the subsequent days, the sensation of being observed appeared to permeate the entire house, instilling a belief that no location was genuinely secure. Each time I traversed the hallway, I experienced an unsettling impression that someone was surveilling me from behind. Sometimes, I would turn around, but the empty hallway only responded with cold silence. In the living room, I always feel an invisible gaze lingering on me, as if someone is silently observing my every move. Sometimes, when I walk through the kitchen or stand by the window, I catch a glimpse of someone passing behind me, just enough to make me shiver. But when I go to check, everything is dead silent, as if nothing happened. During the day, I try to convince myself that it's all just my imagination, that this feeling comes from my own uneasiness. Perhaps the light from outside or the objects accidentally create hallucinations that make me panic. But at night, when the house becomes quiet and the surrounding spaces are plunged into darkness, the feeling becomes stronger. I always have the feeling that my every step echoes not only in my ears, but also in someone else's. I began to feel uneasy even in my own room. Late at night, while I was reading or trying to sleep, would hear a faint sound outside my door, like someone walking past and stopping. I even went out to check a few times, but the hallway was empty. And the doors to the other rooms were all closed. Every time, I would just go back to bed, trying to dispel the creepy feeling inside me. I didn't tell my mother about this because I knew she would scold me for being too sensitive. "You're overthinking things," she would say. Aiden remained calm and composed as usual, showing no signs of anything unusual. But it was his calmness that made me feel even stranger, a coldness so perfect that I couldn't read anything from him. As time passed, the feeling of unease in my heart did not lessen, but on the contrary, it became more and more obvious. Everything started to repeat itself when, once again, my underwear disappeared in the bathroom. Just like before. That night, I finished showering, put on my clothes, and stepped out to comb my still wet hair. I stood in front of the mirror in the living room, slowly drying my hair with a towel, enjoying the feeling of comfort after a long day. When I was about to go back to the bathroom as I was brushing my teeth, the bathroom door unexpectedly opened, and Aiden emerged. He was impeccably attired, holding a towel in his hand. "I am fetching a towel for Mommy," he said, smiling gently. As per usual, I merely nodded and resumed my tasks, not contemplating anything further. However, upon returning to the bathroom, I abruptly recognized that something was amiss. The underwear I had left on the hanger had inexplicably vanished. I thoroughly examined the whole bathroom, from the basket to every corner, but it was entirely gone. A peculiar sensation surged inside me, more intense than before. I attempted to recollect everything, and suddenly the picture of Aiden emerging from the bathroom appeared in my head. What was his purpose for being there? Was his presence connected to this situation? Initially, I attempted to convince myself that he was merely retrieving something for his mother, as he had claimed. However, this coincidence compelled me to question further. I refrained from voicing my concerns, choosing instead to harbor my doubts internally. From that moment onward, every action of Aiden became the focal point of my attention. His increasing ease heightened my alertness regarding him. I meticulously observed his every gesture, glance, and action. Intriguingly, he appeared aware of my scrutiny. Each time I was present, he maintained a composed demeanor, behaving appropriately as usual. Rather than providing reassurance, his calmness intensified my confusion. Was I overanalyzing the situation, or was he genuinely concealing something? Events persisted in such a manner until one day everything started to unveil itself. On Saturday, I had the day free at home, while my mother and Aiden were required to work. The morning unfolded typically. Aiden arose early and cooked breakfast with my mother, who remained composed and courteous. After finishing her meal, my mother promptly departed to ensure she was on time. Aiden departed for work, but before leaving, he came back and instructed me to remain home and recover, offering to be contacted if I needed anything. I nodded, attempting to feign a smile, yet internally, I harbored an indescribable sense of unease. After completing breakfast and tidying the dining table, I began to clean the living room. The silence was so profound that I could distinctly hear my footsteps reverberating on the floor. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the room, which felt familiar yet oddly unsettling. Today, as I bent down to organize a few items, a rough hand suddenly encircled my waist, squeezing me from behind. I froze, my breath caught in my chest as surprise and fear rendered me immobile. "You're so cute, Evelyn," a low voice whispered right next to my ear. Aiden's words caused my heart to cease its rhythm. I attempted to resist, but his grip was firm. "Release me," I yelled, my voice quivering with trepidation as he did not respond immediately. Instead, he emitted a chuckle, his breath brushing against my neck, intensifying my panic. "I've done nothing. I merely wish to engage in play," Aiden whispered. Yet his hand remained firmly clasped around my waist, showing no intention of releasing me. His tone was somewhat composed, albeit laced with tension, with a chilling intensity that evoked terror. The sensation of suffocation overwhelmed me, the coarse grip of his arms inciting fear. I fought more vigorously, but he constricted his hold, seeming intent on testing my resistance. "What are you?" I shouted. "Let me go." My voice constricted in my throat, but Aiden remained silent. He immediately leaned down to my ear, his breath on my neck eliciting chills along my spine. "You're so nervous, Evelyn," he remarked, but his tone lacked playfulness. It seemed more an attempt to soothe than to reassure. "I told you to stop," I shouted, my voice trembling with anger. I attempted to push his hands away, but Aiden's grip only tightened, rendering me ensnared in an inescapable trap. His eyes were so black that they unsettled me profoundly. "You are really lovely, Evelyn," he spoke gently, his voice imbued with an intent I was reluctant to acknowledge. I became immobilized, sensing the disintegration of my surroundings. Aiden embraced me more firmly, as if attempting to dismantle the fragile barriers I had erected. "I desired you from the moment I first beheld you," he confessed, his tone subdued yet unmistakably piercing. Each word resonated painfully in my ears, but I refrained, fearing your mother would discover the truth. I remained there, incredulous, grappling with the revelation of his identity. My voice trembled, almost faltering, although I tried to maintain my calm. "How could you even contemplate this? How could you do this to my mother?" Aiden did not respond immediately. He gazed at me as if grappling with an internal conflict, but then his eyes ignited with resolve. "Your mother. She is not the one I desire. You are the one I have always wanted." The word struck me like a fatal blow, nearly toppling me. I could scarcely fathom that a man like Aiden, whom my mother loved and trusted, could utter such abhorrent statements just this once. "Evelyn," he persisted, his voice a blend of entreaty and determination, "allow me this one occasion, where I will not harm your mother. This is our secret." I fought against it, seething with rage. "You despicable man, what on earth are you contemplating?" However, his might and the intensity of his acts rendered my escape unattainable. I felt his arms constrict, his breath near my ear inducing a sense of suffocation. Everything blurred in that moment. I could not comprehend why I lacked the strength to resist if all was under his dominion. Aiden's words, gaze and even his touch had transcended all boundaries. Throughout that day Aiden and I had been engulfed in chaos that eluded verbal expression. My emotions were a tumultuous amalgamation of guilt, fear and confusion. I could scarcely believe I had permitted events to escalate, allowing something to transpire that should have remained uniged. Time dragged evilly, each minute and second felt interminable, and I repeatedly questioned how I had found myself in this predicament. When my mother returned home in the evening, she appeared astonished to see Aiden. who typically arrived later due to work commitments. However, today was an anomaly. My mother sat down her bag and regarded Aiden with a questioning expression, inquiring, "You came home early today?" "I often see you returning home later." Aiden, as usual, maintained his composure more than I did. Calm and serene, he smiled, approached my mother, extended his hand to accept the bag, and said, "I finished early today. Contemplating you would be pleased if we returned home for dinner together. I have observed your diligent efforts recently." His words were so soft and rational that I could not suppress a shiver. He appeared entirely devoid of any confusion or remorse regarding the recent events. My mother smiled softly, refraining from further inquiries, and proceeded to the kitchen to prepare dinner as per usual. Completely oblivious to any irregularities, however, I was altered in every action. Each emotion seemed transformed. I no longer regarded Aiden as I once did, as someone I had always endeavored to perceive as Emily. My gaze was now imbued with animosity and bitterness. However, I could not dismiss the encroaching feelings of shame and guilt that had infiltrated my heart since that day. Despite the cessation of all interactions between Aiden and me, I recognized that this relationship could never revert to its previous state. Living under the same roof, I was perpetually enveloped by a sense of fear and guilt, akin to an unending nightmare. During family meals, I consistently sensed Aiden's gaze lingering on me longer than customary. It was no longer the affectionate look of a husband towards his stepdaughter, but rather one that instilled a shiver within me. My mother, who had always placed her unwavering trust in and love for Aiden, remained oblivious to any irregularities. Each time I passed him, I endeavored to evade eye contact, yet an intangible fear persisted in my heart, unshakable. Whenever I observed my mother smiling, her eyes radiating happiness, I felt increasingly like a traitor yearning to voice my concerns. I wished to convey my anguish to my mother, yet I lacked the fortitude. The silence enveloped me like a prison, ensnaring me in ceaseless tormenting thoughts. Unable to endure any longer, I resolved to depart. I informed my mother of my desire to move out, asserting my adulthood and the necessity for independence. Initially she was taken aback and reluctant to acquiesce, struggling to comprehend the rationale behind my abrupt decision, especially given my previous desire for closeness with her. "You need not leave," she implored. "Staying home with me is acceptable wherever." She expressed concern, stating that living alone is perilous, yet I remained resolute, asserting my maturity to take care of myself, that this was what I needed to grow up and experience life. My mother finally agreed, even though she was still full of unanswered questions. I knew she didn't understand the real reason I left, and I didn't want her to know. When I left that house, I didn't feel as relieved as I had hoped. The pain was still there, burning in my heart, but at least the distance would help me avoid Aiden's eyes and the horrible memories that I always wanted to forget. Only I knew that this was not the first step to freedom, but the only way for me to save myself from the oppression and suffering that I could not overcome. Everyone's life has unexpected events and challenging moments. Sometimes we are faced with situations that we never imagined, but how we overcome them determines who we are become. My story is a bitter lesson about faith, vulnerability, guilt, and how to protect yourself from bad things that I want to share with everyone. Is never silent when they feel they are in danger, or when they are being hurt by people who are supposed to protect them. Silence can temporarily save you from conflict, but it can also become a prison, trapping you in pain and isolation. Seek help, whether it is from family, friends, or support organizations. Sometimes speaking the truth is the only way to free yourself. A new journey. Furthermore, heed your emotions when an environment feels unsafe, or when you cannot reside comfortably in your own space. This is the moment to decide on a change. Departing is not an escape, but a means of self-protection and a pathway to tranquility. Additionally, I urge parents to remain vigilant regarding their children's emotions and behaviors. Even minor shifts in attitude or ambiguous language can indicate deeper issues that may go unnoticed. Care and understanding not only foster a sense of security for your children, but can also shield them from unspoken anguish. Life invariably presents challenges, yet we possess the autonomy to determine our response. Be courageous and resilient, for you deserve to lead a peaceful and fulfilling life. My narrative concludes here. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for listening. Farewell, and until we meet again.